This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, so we're ready. All right, welcome everybody. Today is Monday, May 11th, 2020. This is our 10 a.m. meeting of the Lincoln County Board of Commissioners. Let me make sure I have a quorum here. I see Commissioner Hunt is here. Do you want to say something and do a sound check?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
How about Commissioner? I can hear you. Yep. How about Commissioner Hall?
Okay, I'm on my phone, so it shows on the screen that my mic is muted, but my phone is working.
Okay, I'm doing the same. Commissioner Hall, are you there? And can you give us a sound check?
Yes, I am. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning. Okay, so we do have a quorum. I'm going to go through all our other participants today and just do a sound check now so that if we have issues, they have time to kind of correct them. So, Christy, Peter?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, Wayne Belmont?
Good morning, everyone.
Okay, Rebecca Austin?
Rebecca Austin here.
Great. Rachel?
I'm here.
Okay, Janet Harrison?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, Wiley?
Wiley's here.
Great. Okay, Sheriff Landers?
Good morning, Commissioner. Curtis Landers here.
Great, thank you. Nicole Field?
Good morning, I'm here.
Okay, Roy Kenyon?
Yep, I'm here.
Okay, great. And is there anyone else on the phone? Nope. Okay, great. Thank you. If you're not talking, I would ask you to go ahead and mute your phone. First up is the adoption of the consent calendar. These are items of a routine nature that either commissioners or staff can pull for further discussion if needed. If there's nothing to pull, then I would entertain a motion for approval.
Move to approve the consent calendar as presented.
I'll second it.
All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Okay, motion carries. Next, under reports, we're going to start with a Lincoln County Public Health COVID-19 update presented by Nicole Field. And I think Rebecca Austin will help us with that. I will just say right now before we jump in that I am going to kind of move around the agenda a little bit. And we're probably going to jump into this report on into decision and action, and then back into discussion for reopening, and then back in decision action for non-COVID related things. So we are going to jump around a little bit, and that is to just make sure all our COVID related discussions flow together and that we don't have to start and stop. So just a heads up on that, but I will turn it over to Nicole.
Good morning. So the overview for the state of Oregon is that there are 3,228 total cases of COVID-19 in the state of Oregon, which includes 6 in Lincoln County, 4 of which are recovered. And we have done 757 negative tests in our county. We did some large-scale testing projects of some vulnerable populations last week. So that was a great opportunity for us to kind of get our feet wet on a large-scale testing event, and we're still getting results rolling in from those tests, but everything looks good so far. There's been a lot of talk about reopening guidance and reopening the county. I know that that is one of the main focuses of this meeting today. So just to do a quick recap of some of those guidelines, we're looking to show a decline in COVID-19 cases.
Actually, Nicole, hey, Nicole, let's pause for just a minute. And I think Christy has the ability to actually bring up that criteria so that people can see it.
Oh, that'd be great.
There we go. And then if we could talk through not just what the criteria actually are, but also where we believe the county or the region isn't actually meeting those as we go through, that would be helpful.
Sure. And I'm not sure if Rebecca wants to take the lead on that too, since she's been leading the actual application process. I'm happy to go through it, but I think she might be kind of the expert on that piece.
Okay.
So yeah, I can jump in here. Thanks, Nicole. Is that all you wanted to talk about, Nicole, for the updates?
Yeah, I think most of my other items kind of focus on the reopening, but I feel like you're probably going to hit them going through this document.
Okay, great. So like Nicole said, these are I think there's 7 or 8 criteria here. And you'll see that there's columns of one that the county has to meet, one that the region has to meet, and then what the role the state will play in each of those. So of course, in the declining prevalence, that is mostly data that's from data that we put in, each county puts into a database. And so the state already has this data. And as you can see, what the county needs to be able to do is show that over a 14-day period, we have had declines in hospital admissions. And even though Lincoln County has had 6 cases, I believe only one of those has been hospitalized, and that has not been in our county. So we definitely meet the first criteria. The second one is a testing.
Can I just ask a clarifying question there? Because I think there's a lot of confusion, at least in the emails I'm getting into my inbox around this. So it's not necessarily a declining number of cases. It's declining number of hospital admissions. Is that correct?
Exactly. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Okay.
That is true. Yes. Actually, the emergency department visits is the 1A is how many people are coming into the emergency room with COVID-like illnesses. So, and the second one is the 14-day decline in hospitalizations. So our county meets both of those. So the second one is the minimum testing regimen, and those are both regional. And they are, it looks to me like everybody in the region is now meeting that. So we need to be able to test at a rate of 30 per 10,000 people a week. So if we have 50,000 people in our county, that would mean, actually that's, anyhow, we have 150 tests we have to do in our county. And we are going beyond that. And that's the Samaritan has put out that data for us so that we know what they're doing every day.
Could you define real quick for people listening what our region is?
Oh, our region, sure. It's Lynn, Benton, Lincoln, and then Marion, Yamhill, and Polk counties. So for people that aren't really familiar with the counties, Marion is the Salem area. Polk is West Salem, Independence, Monmouth, and Yamhill, of course, is McMinnville area. And then the other area is in the testing regimen is sufficient testing sites accessible to underserved communities. And we're really fortunate here in Lincoln County that Samaritan has been standing up their Depot Bay Clinic site from the beginning, actually. And now they have opened an additional site in Woolport. So that really helps us with our underserved communities, having some options where they can go. And we're hoping eventually we'll get a site stood up in Newport as well. So we're feeling pretty good about that. And I think the whole region is feeling pretty good about that one. And then the third one is the contact tracing system. And this is all on the county and all on public health. And that is, the requirement is that we have 15 contact tracers per 100,000 people in the as your population. And we have half of that, about 50,000 people. So that means we need 7.5 people that can do our contact tracing. And we have that in excess of that, actually, so which is good. We have 2.5 people that do it regularly. We've trained up 6 people so far, and we're training 4 more people that are bilingual, bicultural, which will help us meet the B area of number 3, that we can work in different languages needed in our county. So we have 4 people that we're training this week who are Spanish speaking. And then that we're prepared to trace 95% of all cases within 24 hours. And I do believe with the staffing that we have, we could do that, even in an outbreak situation.
Okay. Christy, can you scroll up on the criteria? Thank you.
So then the other area that is completely on the county is number 4, the isolation facilities, that we have taken measures to secure hotel rooms or some kind of alternative isolation for people who either don't have a home to go to if they get sick or need to be quarantined, or for those who can't go home for whatever reason. They have family members that they don't want to expose, or whatever the situation is. So we have been working hard on this one, and the last I heard, we have about 100 rooms that we have reserved for this purpose. So I think we're in good shape there. We are trying to reach out to other areas across the county just to make sure that we have alternatives for people so they can stay as close to home as they can if they did need to go into these areas. I think most of our 100 rooms are right here in Newport. So, and that we need to provide a narrative about outbreak situations, which we have done a lot of work with our long-term care facilities, so we're writing that up. We are working with our fish plants right now to mitigate a possible outbreak, so we'll write that one up. And then the last one I think we'll use is with our jail, who has done a lot of advanced planning and preparation if they were to get an outbreak. So I think we're really in good shape on number 4. Number 5 is not a county or regional requirement, but it's finalizing all the sector guidelines. And this is a really important one, but it falls to the state to do that. This is what is required from each sector to open up safely. So we have put most of those guidelines up on our webpage. So if you are a retailer, you can go in and look at what the requirements are that you need to meet before you can open up. The same with restaurants, the same with hotels and the public places. So they've gone right down the list and made all these requirements. So people really need to go in and look at our webpage for those requirements and make sure that they can meet them before they open up. And then number 6 is sufficient healthcare capacity. So this is the ability to accommodate a 20% increase in hospitalizations. And as you just heard, under the first area, I believe it was, the declining rates of hospitalization, we don't have anybody in Lincoln County in the hospital with a COVID illness, so we can obviously meet that one handily.
Given that that's Rebecca, given that that's a regional criteria, how are our other hospitals within our region doing on that?
Well, I heard from Katrina in Marion County that they have that capacity already as well.
Great,
so
thank you.
Yeah, and I think Samaritan, generally speaking, has that capacity across our region. So I'm just not clear where we would be with Polk and Yamhill, but I haven't heard that they don't meet it. So I guess that's a good sign. And we'll check back.
I have heard from Yamhill directly, and they feel they can meet that on their end. So that's good news.
Yeah, great. And so then the last criteria, number 7, is having sufficient PPE supply. And that one is kind of divvied up between the region, the more the hospitals, what they have on hand. And then the county does have one area there that requires that we have enough PPE for our first responders. And I do believe that we are in pretty good shape there as well.
Christy, can you scroll up again? Thank you. Here we go.
And I think we have gotten inventories from Samaritan here, and they are looking good that they can handle the B part, and we are looking good. We can handle the C part. So I think we're in good shape with PPE, but of course we're all still scrounging because if we were to get an outbreak, we would be burning through it. So, and I know the hospital is monitoring their stash very carefully as well.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Hunt, questions from you?
Yes, Rebecca, this is probably a difficult question to answer, but if we get a surge and all of a sudden the county sees an increase in the number of cases and in the number of hospitalizations, at what point do you think our resources would be maxed out, or at what point would our resources no longer be able to handle the increase? You know, what number of cases and what number of hospitalizations?
Yeah, that is a hard question, and I haven't heard from the state exactly, how they're going to handle that. But I know that as far as contact tracing would go, we could call upon the state, and I did put that in an evaluation that we did, an assessment of what we did, that if I felt like we could handle kind of a normal surge, but anything that if we had started to get multiple outbreaks in facilities especially, that we might need to call upon the state. As far as our PPE resources go, that could be, detrimental to our operations for sure. I think the hospital is feeling like they're sitting pretty good right now, but if we were to get a big surge and started burning through it, now we do have some resources that, we can package up now N95 masks and send them to Eugene to have them be sanitized, and then they'll send them back to us. So there are some things put in place that will really help us maintain practice, even in a surge. And I think Samaritan has also gone to cloth gowns, which can also be cleaned and reused. So we are trying really hard to prepare ourselves so that we don't get in a situation where we don't have more PPE. I think for us, the more challenging thing will be to make sure that when things start opening up, that those people have the proper PPE to keep their staff safe at work. And, like our dentists want to open up and we don't have a lot of extra PPE to give to them, which is a sad commentary because they were so generous in, handing over all their PPE to us to use when we first got into this response. So there are definitely still restrictions, I would say, that it's not all good and running smoothly, but I think some mitigation has happened to, help make sure that once we do get a surge that we can keep serving people.
Okay, I have a second question. On the form that we're looking at, it says required and it's highlighted in green. I sense from your comments that not only is it required, but we meet the requirement, or am I just hung up on semantics?
No, that means that if it's required, we have to meet that criteria, right? And we have to tell them or show them how we meet that. So that will be part of the application.
Okay, so is it safe to say, based on your comments today, at least at the county level where it's required, we meet that requirement?
Yes, it's safe to say. And I would also say that I think it's a pretty low bar, that all we have to do is provide PPE to first responders. I don't want people to think that's all we are required to do. I mean, that's all we are required to do, but we want to do so much more, especially opening up safely and staying open. We want to make sure that people have the equipment they need to, stay safe. So I don't know quite how we're going to do that. And a lot of it is falling onto the businesses. So I think there is a scramble out there right now to get cloth masks for people, get gloves and other equipment that they may need to stay safe.
Well, that was the intent behind my first question. I mean, clearly meeting the criteria and being able to address a surge are two different questions. And, certainly the fact that we've had zero or have zero hospitalizations, if you're a numbers person, any increase over zero is infinite. So what happens if we get 5 cases and then 20% would be 1? We're in a good position. I hope we can continue to stay there as we move forward.
Well, let's
That's
just
all
hope that, let's hope that PPE just becomes more readily available as well, so we can keep stockpiling and assuring that that's going to be the case. And I know that's what Samaritan is doing. I've talked to them, and they are doing that as well. So we're all still out there kind of beating the bushes for PPE.
All right, good work. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Commissioner Hall, any questions or comments from you?
Yeah, so Rebecca, I don't know, ultimately, I guess it's our call for submission of our phase 1 opening application to the state, but it sounds like, again, you're telling us that we meet what requirements, what targets the state, it appears that we meet the targets that the state has set out. So at this point, or at some point, the agenda item we've got later today is for the full board to authorize Chair Jacobson to sign and submit the application. Are you going to be making a recommendation to us whether or not to go forward? And if so, as to when to make that submittal?
I am making that recommendation that I feel that we meet all the requirements in the list of criteria.
And would you suggest we submit with a May 15th date, or or do we have the option of asking for a later date? I know the state has not been really clear or consistent on its guidance, but my understanding was we're now in the window. It opened Friday that we can start submitting, and that the state would review and approve on a first come, first served basis. So, or do we even have a choice in the date, or once we submit, does the state take in the driver's seat at that point?
I would say that's probably the case, that the state would be in the driver's seat once we submit. And I think that if all goes as we're hoping today at this meeting, that we will be able to go forward and submit our application, hopefully today or at the latest early tomorrow. And then we'll just have to see what happens. I mean, I think throughout this whole response, the state has been slow compared to what we can produce in a pretty quick turnaround time. So I guess I wouldn't hold my breath that we would get the okay by the 15th, but I would say it's probably close.
Okay.
My understanding, I was going to say, my understanding from calls late last week is exactly what Rebecca had said as well, that while some counties that are submitting put in a date they want to reopen, ultimately that's up to the governor's office and mostly has to do with their ability to move through applications, verify material, have you correct anything that maybe they need more information about. So even if we submitted a date, that doesn't necessarily mean that that's the date that we would get.
Okay, that's helpful. I was thinking Director Austin and I were on the regional conference call with the governor on Thursday, and I believe the statement was made that OHA would turn around the applications quickly, but we've learned more than once through the years that our idea of quick and Salem's idea of quick don't always align.
It's also a new process for them. They've never done this before either. So.
Sure. Okay.
Other questions? Oh, go ahead.
No, I was going to say I don't have any more comments or questions at this point. This is helpful. Thank you.
Okay, and we'll kind of discuss more here coming up in our agenda. So we're not done with this necessarily. I was hoping that Christy, could you bring up what phase 1 actually means? Thank you. So Rebecca just kind of walked us through what that gatekeeping criteria was to get to phase one. My understanding is that after we're in phase one, and here's what phase one means, that then we have to repass that gatekeeping criteria to get into phase two. So we're going to be revisiting that criteria several times as we go through this. But up is kind of what phase one, kind of looks like in terms of what gets to reopen and what does not get to reopen. And kind of looking at all the emails I received over the weekend, there is some definite confusion on what things kind of fall under governor's office reopening and what things fall under the county. And so I just want to kind of make it clear that here's the stuff specifically that the governor is saying can reopen and how under phase one. The issue with lodging, hotels, motels, and vacation rentals, that was a county and city action that was taken by both Lincoln County Board of Commissioners and also cities within Lincoln County. And I believe we're going to discuss that as well in our agenda later today, but those are kind of two different processes or two different things. So I just kind of wanted to make that clear, which is why you won't see lodging and vacation rentals and stuff specifically in this governor framework. Rebecca, anything you wanted to kind of add or go through with this phase one piece here?
Well, I do think this is our challenge, to really educate our community about moving into phase one, who can move into phase one and who cannot move into phase one, and what that means exactly. Because, it seems like everybody heard the governor say, we're going to move into reopening the state, and that's all anybody heard after that. They went kind of deaf on us. So I think that is going to be our challenge, and just to make sure that we are going to start a campaign that really emphasizes sort of the three things that have to happen to make sure that we are all safe in phase one, and then also that we're all in this together. So if people decide not to abide by those areas, like wearing a mask, washing your hands, keeping the 6-foot distancing, if they decide not to do that, the chances are that we're going to get an uptick in cases, and enough that the state would say, sorry, Lincoln County, we have to close you down again. So we don't want that. And our campaign is something like, keeping Lincoln County open. Once we start this, we don't want to go back, because that is going to be really painful for people. And especially it's our summer season, so we want to be able to do this safely. So I think that's the messaging we're going to be trying to get out, is to just make sure that everybody is abiding by the phase one rules. And you can see them here in the last column, some of the areas that they're focusing on in phase one and what the requirements will be. So I would really urge people that are listening to this and fit into any one of those sectors that they go online and get the list of things that they need to be able to do. And if they need consultation, public health is happy to do that. Just give our call center a call, and we can get them to the right people that can help them figure things out.
Okay, questions from Commissioner Hunt on phase one?
None at this time.
Okay, Commissioner Hall?
None at this time.
Okay, great, thank you. Rebecca, is there anything else you wanted to kind of provide an update on that's COVID related?
I don't think at this time, no, thank you.
Okay, thanks. I'm going to suggest that we move into, let's see here. Maybe we have the reopening plans and updates kind of discussion, which we sort of already did. And then after that, we can come to the decision action item to authorize myself and Rebecca Austin to sign an application to the governor and reopen Lincoln County. So under discussion information, we'll start first. It's reopening plans and updates. Wayne, was there a specific update you wanted to provide under this?
Yes, there is, commissioners, and this really dovetails into your last conversation about making the application for reopening. And I want to make this really clear, and it's contained in the order that would authorize the chair and the public health administrator to sign the application, that the phase one reopening doesn't just open the doors. It's not like flipping the light switch on as was indicated. It's a phased reopening. And so there are certain activities that are allowed and under certain restrictions and guidelines. One of the questions we get is, what does that mean for our countywide orders, which prohibited short-term rentals and hotels and motels from renting out? Where does that stand? This application does not change those orders. And in fact, if you look at the guidance that's given and the restrictions that are provided, and in fact, we heard directly from the governor last week, the limitations on travel are still in place and continue in place even in phase one. And so we have a separate process that we've put aside for talking about the reopening of short-term rentals and hotels and motels, and we're working on that. At our last joint meeting with the mayors and city councils, we indicated we would form a work group, which has been formed, to look at what that plan might include. And we have put together a working draft, which is now out for some discussion. And we will make sure that the initial draft is placed on the county website for folks to comment on. And we have been receiving a number of comments now. And I know a couple of city councils today are going to be taking that up and discussing it. And that working draft really, at this point, recommends that we pick a hard date to talk about reopening. And then when we do reopen, we have some limitations. Again, a phased reopening for that part of our tourism economy in the county. And so I know the commissioners have seen a copy of that and can provide me with any comments for the work group. The work group is intending to meet again tomorrow and finalize these draft recommendations. And then we're coming back again with the mayors and city councils in another joint meeting this coming Thursday at 3 o'clock. And we'll do that in the same manner we've been doing these other meetings, and let all the elected officials weigh in on where we're going with the reopening plan for the lodging industry. And I will note that what we have done at this particular point is suggested a hard date rather than trying to tie it into specifically to the phases. We have a hard date recommended that would be June 1st, in which we would begin the reopening process for those. That coincides with the last order that was adopted by the Board of Commissioners and the City Councils, which extended the prohibition through May 31st. So if there's any questions on that, I'd be happy to answer those.
Commissioner Hunt, questions?
Sorry, it took me a while to get. I don't have any questions, but I guess I'll state first that I am not the support of one opening for all of the lodging facilities. I think that would lead to an inundation of the county, an inundation of those other businesses that are trying to get open and get their feet on the ground. So I am not in favor of a June 1 opening for all of the hospitality businesses. I would support it for hotels, motels, campgrounds, but I think the VRDs, short-term rentals, I think should be a phase 2 opening.
Okay, Commissioner Hall, questions, comments?
I'm just not sure where I'm going to fall yet on reopening. I want to see how the plan is received. We're already getting a lot of feedback, positive and negative. I know we're looking at phasing of the opening, enhanced cleaning procedure protocols, safety protocols, and this is a challenge, and frankly, I think the state's lack of clarity on messaging has been a big challenge as well. On Thursday, they said For instance, the order on non-essential travel remains in place, and we said, well, okay, what does that mean? And then finally, I think it was Friday, we got the guidance that even during a phase 1 opening, that means no travel beyond 50 miles. So even if we do open up some lodging on June 1st, there's going to be the mixed messaging to people. Yes, we're open, but you're really not supposed to come unless you live close by. But so, a lot of moving pieces that we're having to deal with very quickly.
I would just add that how I maybe would want the county to reopen to lodging and tourists and how it's maybe going to reopen are two different things. And I think this weekend was a example of that. Going up to Lincoln City for some essential travel, huge amounts of cars camped out and parked on roadways, literally camping on the side of the road. Lots of people violating state park closures. Many visitors in town. Despite lodging being closed and our restaurants being closed except only for takeout and that kind of stuff. Many people I saw were essentially, just kind of cliff diving down the side of the road, trying to, forge their own beach access because a lot of our state parks, all of our state parks are still closed. So I also would say the other thing that I'm, a little concerned about, even though they don't have a whole lot of lodging, is the city of Wallport only extended their lodging ban until the 15th of May. I do believe that they're rediscussing that, but I'm not sure if that will be extended or not. So even though they, don't have as many beds for lodging that, say, Newport or Yachats or Lincoln City does, having a part of the county open for lodging and the rest of the county not creates this weird inconsistency that I think is going to be difficult, both for tourists to understand, for enforcement purposes, et cetera. So I'm not quite sure where I land yet either. I would like some more feedback and to see what Wallport does. But like I said, I feel like in some ways, people heard the press release from the governor on Friday, and I think a lot of what they heard was open. Not necessarily that there's criteria you have to meet or that non-essential travel is banned. I think they heard the word open and kind of put the stay-home order to bed, so to speak. So I'm concerned that our ability to gatekeep and have people adhere to those criteria in phase 1 in terms of visitors coming is going to be incredibly challenging and difficult, especially judging from just what I saw this weekend. And I certainly, it wasn't just my experience because my inbox is full from other residents saying that they saw similar issues from parts of the county that they live in as well. So, like I said, I don't have a definitive place on where I stand right now, but I am kind of concerned that the horse is out of the barn, and getting horses back in the barn can be really difficult.
Even more difficult than herding cats, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, herding horses. All right. I think, is there any other, reopening plans or updates, Wayne, that you had under discussion information?
Not at this point.
Okay. I would suggest that we move back up into authorizing County Chair, myself, and Public Health Administrator Rebecca Austin to sign an application to the governor and reopen Lincoln County. That's under decision action. My understanding is that hopefully that application will go in today or very early tomorrow, but hopefully today. I would just say that because we ultimately don't control the date, we have to wait for approval. We don't just submit and then get to reopen. We have to wait for that information to be verified both at a county level and at a regional level. I would suggest that maybe we don't specify a specific date because it's ultimately not in our control anyways. And I would hate to provide a date, have restaurants and businesses start, preparing to reopen and then have that date not be met because it's out of our control. So maybe we submit without a date, and then once we hear back from the state with approval, then we can reopen afterwards. That's kind of, I guess, how I'm feeling about it, but I'd like to see how Commissioner Hunt and Hall are feeling about that.
Commissioners, if I might, just to give you a little better information to make that decision on, there are a number of counties that have submitted their applications at this point. Those are available online at the governor's website. I've taken a look at a number of those, and I can tell you there's some that have dates that go back to May 8th, actually asking to open, which of course was not granted. They haven't been reviewed yet. And there are many of them that also have no specific date. That's not uncommon to see that in the applications.
Commissioner Hunt, questions, comments?
Well, I guess I'm not sure what the date issue is. I am certainly comfortable in giving the chair and Director Austin authority to execute the documents, but I would be concerned if we opened before June 1st. If the documents say June 1st or the date thereafter that we receive approval, I'm comfortable with that. But if we submit a document with no date and the governor, everything works smoothly and we're opening on the 16th of May, I'm uncomfortable with that because I feel that we're going to be risking a surge and we'll be looking very likely at the possibility of having to shut down. So I'm okay with a date that says June 1st or whenever we receive the governor's approval on that date or after that date.
And Commissioner Hunt, I just want to clarify, you're talking about that phase 1 reopening, not vacation lodging as the June 1 date as it currently is, but as that phase 1 reopening from the governor's guidance.
Correct.
Okay. All right, Commissioner Hall.
I'd like to see a level of certainty for us, for the businesses, but really I'm not sure at this point now with the state having set up the structure and calling the shots. I guess I'm saying I don't feel super strongly one way or the other about including a specific date in the application because I know that people feel strongly both ways, and I guess I'm willing to go with the group consensus. And if the governor tells us, I doubt if we'll see that quick a turnaround, but if we can be open a week from this weekend, I'm okay with that too.
And I guess how I'm thinking, and then I'll make a suggestion is, I would like us to be able to get into that phase 1 reopening before June 1. That's ultimately not our decision. We have to have this application in, that sort of gets in the line of being reviewed. Those things have to be verified, both as a county or a region. I really couldn't guess how long it's going to take the state to do that. I would like to see us be able to at least get our restaurants partially open and some other things before that June 1 deadline, but again, not up to me. So my suggestion is maybe we submit without a date because again, we don't control that date anyways. And then once we hear back that we, have approval or that they feel approval is coming, that maybe we hold an emergency BOC meeting and be able to then come up with the date we want to reopen once we sort of get a heads up or some indication that we are approved.
That makes sense to me.
Yeah, I'll note that really what that does, though, is provides no clear date for anybody, which is one of the complications we're trying to avoid. But understood.
Wayne, from kind of a legal end, does that work?
Yeah, that would work. That's fine. The order does not actually have a specific date in it. And this discussion is very helpful as we put together our application for what we will include as a date, or allowing, as you just indicated, the state to tell us whether or not we meet the criteria, and then we'll choose a date.
Yeah, I think also, you know, as we see some of these applications get reviewed and how long that takes and that kind of stuff, we might be able to kind of make a guess on you know, what's going to happen next. So, okay, so it sounds like we kind of have consensus to submit without a date, and then we'll discuss once we kind of hear back or understand that our application is moving. However, we do need to make a decision here on authorizing the county chair, myself, and public health administrator to sign an application to the governor to reopen Lincoln County.
I would move that the board authorizes Chair Jacobson and Director Austin to sign and submit the reopening application to the state.
If the motion doesn't include a date of June 1st or thereafter, I'll vote in opposition.
I think this is just authorizing myself and Rebecca Austin to sign the application.
And if it doesn't include a date of June 1st or later, I'll vote against it.
Okay. I will second the motion made by Commissioner Hall. All in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any nays?
Nay, because again,
Okay.
I don't think it could open before June 1st.
Okay. All right, noted, and motion does pass. Moving on here a little bit, but still COVID related, I was hoping we could get kind of a update while we just discussed kind of the state framework for reopening and gatekeeping criteria and that kind of thing. I was hoping we could get an update from Rachel Maddox-Hughes and Wiley Thompson on the county's recovery plan and various funding sources. I know we are tracking for that. So Rachel, updates from you.
Yes, absolutely. So last Friday, the application opened with Business Oregon for the first set of $2.5 million. This is the money that's coming down from the e-board. There was a big lump sum of about $10 million, and they're only releasing the first 5 to start with. We are in a position to be one of the first local jurisdictions to apply for that, and I'll be working on that this week. And we do require matching funds for that amount. In addition, we are waiting for our pre-approval from FEMA for the non-congregate shelter. That was approximately to house 100 people per month, and that can be renewed every month once we do receive that approval. In addition, we are going to be submitting our FCC grant today, and that will be for just shy of $500,000. And that is to stand up even more connected care to facilitate telehealth around the county. And then we continue to track other pots of money as they become available. We're bird dogging a lot, as you guys all know, because everyone is finding out things at the last minute. Katie and I had a good, Commissioner Jacobson and I, excuse me, had a good meeting with the Early Learning Division, and we're trying to find out what local entities in the child care arena have actually applied for support. And so when we have that information, it'll provide us a little bit with a better picture of where the gaps may be.
Thanks, Rachel.
Yep.
Wiley Thompson?
Good morning, commissioners and others on the line. Working right now to develop our social media plan to do some open source innovation to bring in some of the content areas that will eventually become project areas for the recovery. And this is going to cover a short, intermediate, and long-term horizon. We're building the teams. Today, I'm meeting and briefing the recovery plan as it exists to our community equity and resilience team, along with the members of the OSU Extension office. And so we'll have some of the program areas represented there. We're sort of a group to help guide and kind of group efforts. We've sort of brought them kind of 3 program pillars for moving forward. Economic vitality, healthy communities, and livable communities will be the three main emphasis. And under those, there'll be a number of different efforts, and some actually kind of connect to each other. But everything we do, we want to do through a lens of equity, sustainability, and resilience. And so we're kind of excited about where we're going, and I really appreciate the help of Rachel as she's, we need a lot of social and economic entrepreneurs, but we also need someone who's really smart on resources. She's done a fantastic job.
All right, questions from other commissioners? Commissioner Hunt, questions or comments?
Not at this time.
Okay, Commissioner Hall?
Not at this time. Appreciate the update.
Okay, kind of sticking under the report category here, kind of putting in an additional agenda item. I would like to get a report from Curtis Landers over kind of weekend activity. Like I said earlier, I saw a lot of visitors in town and some things actively being violated. Just kind of wanted to hear from the sheriff's office on reports and calls they responded to around that activity, and if we had any tickets being issued or anything like that.
Good morning, Commissioners. Curtis Landers, Lincoln County Sheriff. You, Commissioner Jacobson, you actually described it very well as far as what the deputies are seeing. They're seeing an increase in traffic. People are finding unique places to park that were probably legal but weren't initially purposed for that. I think another complaint that I forwarded to you and Director Kenyon specifically was the Curtis Street beach access just north of Seal Rock, which is a county access that has been open. When I saw it this weekend, it was very full, and we received an email from someone indicating that it was very full. And again, that's a beach access that wasn't really designed for high volume. It's not paved, it's gravel, and so there's no lines marked, and people just kind of, again, park uniquely in there to get down to the beach. I think that's been either the people driving by are finding that one's not roped off and they can park there, or for whatever reason, people are utilizing that spot. So I think that's going to increase as we move on, regardless of what we do. We're continuing to watch it, and we still receive complaints anywhere from if someone sees an out-of-state plate that they call in that obviously we can't enforce to actual complaints, people parking, camping, and pullouts, this type of thing that between us and the state police we're looking at. As far as short-term rental, we still continue to receive complaints on that. We're actually looking at a couple in Seal Rock right now. I will say that the very high majority of those complaints have been unfounded, and there haven't been any citations issued toward short-term lodging as far as that's concerned. If there has been a violation, it's been minor, it's been some education and people are in compliance, but we haven't even seen that recently. Over the weekend, there were no citations or enforcement activities related to COVID-19 closures that we had, and again, the complaints seem to have dropped off a little bit, but I see that there's a lot of activity out there and a lot of ability to keep enforcement, keep an eye on things.
Yeah, question for you. So when you were saying that there's been a lot of phone calls and stuff around vacation rentals or lodging in general, allowing people that weren't essential workers that didn't meet that criteria, but most of those have been unfounded. What was the nature of them being unfounded? Was it that when officers occurred, that people were no longer there, or they were owners, or kind of why were those unfounded?
I think that the majority of them were owners or family of owners that were coming over and basically quarantining or isolating them at their house here rather than their primary residence.
Okay. All right, questions or comments? Commissioner Hunt, questions or comments?
Okay, sorry, my mute button is being persnickety. I guess the question I have, and I recognize that most of the flagrant violations where businesses are open and doing business, if you will, under the old normal, are probably within city limits. But what is the approach that the deputies are taking where we've got flagrant violations of businesses operating in violation of the governor's executive orders?
So for businesses, if we receive a complaint of a violation and we follow up that it is a complaint or that is a validated complaint, what we're doing initially is educating them, telling them it is a violation. If they continue to operate business, then we're taking a report and forwarding it to whatever licensing authority they have over that business to address that either immediately or in the future, as far as future suspensions, that type of thing. We haven't, actually, I'm trying to think if we've actually done that where we actually had to forward anybody on in our area. Again, I don't know about the cities, but for the most part, we're not receiving complaints of just flagrant violations of businesses continuing to operate.
What if it were in municipalities where there is no separate law enforcement department?
Where it's in our coverage area, we would respond to that, yes. Is that what you're saying, or other law enforcement?
Walport, Depot Bay, they don't have their own police departments.
Correct, that would be our responsibility, anyone outside the incorporated areas that have law enforcement coverage.
And you would be responding to those in those city limits?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, thank you.
It's my understanding that when we got together with the other chiefs for the cities that do have law enforcement, they're taking the similar approach, and that's actually a statewide approach that agencies are doing from other sheriff's offices and police departments to do that education first and then forward a report to the licensing authority for whatever type of business it is.
Okay, I'm sorry, I'll follow up. Would there be a circumstance where you might issue a citation if the violation continues to be flagrant?
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, Commissioner Hall, questions or comments for Sheriff Landers?
Okay, thank you. Just a comment, I guess. One theme that I have seen in the very heavy traffic into my inbox over the weekend and some social media posts as well. And, there's seems to be a growing perception, and it can be very hard to, excuse me. It can be, thank you. It can be very hard to manage perceptions, but folks are saying, hey, we've played by the rules. We've shut down our business. We've shut down our vacation rentals, and they're feeling very, very frustrated at what they perceive, especially Friday and Saturday, which I think were the really high traffic days here, that, that they feel like they're being punished for playing by the rules. And I don't know, short of enforcement resources beyond what we could probably manage, I don't know how you address that. And even with a lot more resources, whether you could.
Well, yeah, I mean, that can be frustrating if somebody is, again, I think a lot of it is perception. I think, especially the short-term rental, the majority of the violations that we found, they are in compliance with some type of the exception to the order. And I think that's what's difficult is, an example is somebody sees a house that they know is a short-term rental, and all of a sudden there's, 3 or 4 cars parked there. Why it looks over the weekend, and we go up there, investigate it, and it happens to be the owner, which we're not kicking out the owner for utilizing their own home. So it's really, but we follow up on it, and then we let the complainant know, and hopefully that helps address those issues. We're still open. We're still following up on any complaints received, and we're not turning a blind eye to any of it. So if there are complaints, please continue. And I know you have, all 3 of you forward to us complaints that we can follow up on and then report back to what our findings are. If it is a true violation, we will take the appropriate action, and because again, we're here to enforce the ordinances that you put into place. and also the states. So that's what we're trying to accomplish. And you know, we are able to respond to complaints now. We're not overwhelmed with them at this point. So if there are complaints, we're still able to respond to them. It's not like a 4th of July where we just cannot respond to fireworks complaints. It's just, you know, it's our ability to do that is overwhelmed. We're not at that situation right now. So we are still able to follow up on those complaints.
That's good to know. Okay, still under reports, let's move on to commissioner reports. Commissioner Hunt, any reports?
No, not at this time. Thank you. Good information today.
Okay, under reports still, Commissioner Hall?
Nothing at this time.
Okay, a few things from me just to kind of share with the group. Myself and Wayne Belmont had a call with Representative or Congressman Schrader. I forget what day that was, Friday, I think. And just had a quick chat. Him really, you know, wanting to know how we were doing as a county and if we were going to be able to meet gatekeeping criteria, et cetera. Additionally, we talked about money in the CARES Act that was passed at a federal level last month, and where the money is for local jurisdictions, including counties. That money was essentially passed onto the state, and it's been kind of unclear how that money is going to get to us. Schrader did say that he had a call with Governor Brown just shortly before we had our call, and that the state believes they need to have the emergency board meet to distribute that. That was not something that could be done directly by her. And so I went ahead after our phone call as chair and sent a note out to Representative David Gomberg, who is, of course, on the e-board, asking him to please verify that that is the correct path forward for those monies, and to hopefully get the e-board up into emergency session so that they can distribute that money, not just to us, but to all counties. So I have not heard back from him other than that thank you, and that he was not aware that that was the path that had to move forward. So I'm sure he's working on getting that clarification and hopefully getting that e-board up to do that. Additionally, the two work groups that I'm personally working on for reopening, one is a recreation work group. So all of the cities, as well as state parks, BLM, Forest Service, I think that's everybody in the county, trying to work together to create a plan for where we see different parks reopening according to the phases. So while there was some guidance given for outdoor recreation activities in phase 1, you know, it's still up to those jurisdictions that own those particular facilities to see where those things fit. And so we haven't come up with dates, but we have come up with where we see different types of parks and outdoor activities that all of us own as different municipalities being able to fit in, and hopefully trying to have a real coordinated approach for how those things open, so that, you know, one city's parks are closed while the other ones are open, and it gets super confusing for everybody. So we're just trying to coordinate on that locally, as well as with some of our state and federal partners, to kind of be on the same page with each other. And in addition, I'm also doing the same for boat launches. So working with our ports, as well as cities and counties, and also some federal partners that all own boat launches. I will say on that note that we have a recreational all-depth halibut openers coming up. The one that was scheduled for the 14th, 15th, and 16th was canceled by the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife, but the one scheduled for the following week is still on. That one will be happening. And so the Port of Newport is reopening, basically to be able to accommodate that. So I believe they're opening later on this week in preparation for the halibut opener that is opening the following week. And I don't know if a decision has been made yet on Depot Bay, but I believe they were going to try to do something similar to what the Port of Newport was doing. As for other boat launches, no definitive decisions made yet, but a lot of those are within day use parks. A lot of the boat launches up rivers and that kind of stuff are within day use areas, so they likely will be folded into when day use areas reopen. And I believe the boat launch in Lincoln City as part of Regatta Park, I think they are looking on some small openings here this week or next for basically houses in the area that have boats that they need to get in the water. So that's kind of the update from what I know from boat launches and recreation areas. And I think we're meeting again, both those groups later this week to kind of discuss some things more in detail. Also at noon today, so kind of after this phone call at noon, I will be on a virtual meeting with the Lincoln City Chamber of Commerce, as well Rebecca Austin and Sarah Means from the Governor's Office and Regional Solutions, who's been our point of contact from the Governor's Office to basically try to answer questions from businesses around phase one reopening guidelines and those kinds of stuff. So for anyone watching this now that's a business owner and feels like they didn't get their questions answered or has a specific question, that might be a good place for you to tap in at noon. And I believe the information for how you get into that is available on the Lincoln City Chamber of Commerce website. All right, bouncing around on our agenda again, I apologize for that. We're going to go back into decision and action items. I think we've mostly gotten through all of our COVID-related stuff, and now into kind of some regular items. First on decision and action is the transfer of jurisdiction of a portion of Logan Road. I believe, though, Wayne got a hold of me, and I believe that we actually need to move that to the following week. Is that correct, Wayne?
That is correct, Chair Jacobson. The city of Lincoln City did accept our offer for the transfer of the portion of Logan Road, plus some additional funds. They adopted an ordinance which memorialized their decision, but as I was reviewing the ordinance, it actually doesn't become effective until later this week. So we don't want to actually do our order of transfer until such time as their ordinance is in effect. So we'll put it on next week's calendar and get that adopted and get the road transferred.
Okay, thank you. And then finally, under decision and action is bid award 10102 bridge cap repair on East Devils Lake Road, presented by Roy Kenyon, Public Works Director.
Good morning, everyone. This is Roy Kenyon, Lincoln County Public Works Director. And what we're looking at is kind of what I would consider phase two of this project. Phase one was done in 2015, and we actually took out a bridge, removed a bridge and replaced it with a box culvert, or basically a flat metal culvert, and then raised the road. Well, we was able to raise about the elevation of about half the road. And this is phase two, where we're doing actually the other bridge and matching up the grade with the first project. Because of the length of the bridge that we're going to be working on, we don't have the option of replacing it with anything other than a bridge. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to remove the deck of the bridge, lengthen out the piling, and put the deck back on. It's going to raise the elevation about 2.5 feet. Currently, the water actually is at about the same level as the bridge. So we don't have a good flow. That section of the road still does flood in the winter during high flow periods. And so this really should get our feet up out of the water. It should, for some time, actually fix our flooding problem. Other than at extreme high flows, I can't guarantee that we're going to be completely dry, but that would be an extreme event. We went out to bid on the project, received bids, and had a bid opening on April 22nd. The bid was actually, low bid was Cascade Civil Corporation at $256,891. It was approximately $25,000 more than engineer's estimate. And I bring this project to you for you're okay to go forward with it for your approval.
Questions? Mr. Hunt, questions or discussions?
I have no questions. I'll just note that I hope we don't see another picture of the fish on the road, which got us a lot of notoriety. Maybe not the kind we want.
Actually, this project should get all the fish back down where they belong. Like I said, we're going to be 2.5 feet higher than what we currently are. We're with the raising of the bridge, it's going to allow more flow in that area. So actually, we should see less rising water than we would normally. And I would think that with opening up the bridge area, it's going to increase the velocity of the flow under the bridge. It's going to kind of put things back to where they're at, and it should be good for fish passage.
Commissioner Hall, questions or discussions?
No questions. It's nice to see this moving forward. And I will ask Roy a question if I could. These bid numbers look pretty favorable, and any insights onto why that is?
Well, we actually did receive 6 bids for this project. I think that with the economy slowing down for obvious reasons, I think that everyone that I've talked to in the state of Oregon has seen good low numbers on bids for contracts. I think there's a lot of hungry contractors out there. There was a lot of things that were kind of put on hold. This was something that we were able to go ahead on. Now, of course, this won't happen until the summer, until the new fiscal year. But these are the kind of projects that basically you start a year before, and it's a long drawn out process. So we continued on with the process knowing that, one, we were going to get good numbers, and two, that it was something that had to be done. But I think overall, there's a lot of need for work. A couple years ago, it was just the opposite. A couple years ago, there was a lot of work. Contractors weren't really that hungry. They had more jobs to bid on than they could ever get done. Now the pendulum has swung the other way, and so I'm not saying that it's a good thing overall, but it's actually a good thing for anybody that's trying to get work done, because there's a lot of contractors that are more than willing to bid on all these jobs.
Well, I appreciate that update, and perhaps we'll be able to take advantage of this situation on some future projects as well.
Yeah, actually, there's going to be several of these projects that are going to be coming in front of the board for approval. One is an asphalt paving job, and then we actually have a bridge replacement job. They'll be coming up in the next 2 or 3 weeks. And so, yeah, for us, it's been really good timing.
Just the only comment from myself, and I think you kind of already said this, but just to make it clear for people listening, is that these are not monies coming out of the general fund, but rather that are specific for roads and that we can't use for something else legally. So just to kind of make that clear for people listening in. With that, I would entertain a motion.
I'll move for approval of the bid award as specified in the agenda.
I'll second it.
Okay, all in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Okay, any nays? Nope. All right. Motion carries.
All right, thank you very
With
much.
that, I'm sorry?
I said thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Roy. I believe even though we zigzagged through the agenda, we have gotten through everything. Before I adjourn the meeting, just want to make sure there's no last discussion items or anything from other commissioners. Commissioner Hunt, anything?
No, not at this time.
Okay. Commissioner Hall, anything?
Not at this time, thanks.
Anything else from staff on the phone?
Yes, this is Wayne Belmont again. Just to note that our agenda shows this meeting as the board's next board meeting as Monday, the 18th at 10 o'clock. We have been discussing possibly moving that time because there's a series of meetings that seem to be happening on Monday mornings, including a number with our Emergency Operations Center, so that we may actually change the time of that meeting next week and put it at either a later time in the morning or even early afternoon. So just a notation that once we determine when we're going to do that, we'll put out the appropriate notice for that meeting time.
Okay, thank you. Other scheduled meetings and appointments of the board. Thursday, May 14th, 2020, 3 p.m. we'll have a special meeting, a joint meeting between the Lincoln County Board of Commissioners and the Mayor, City Council, and City Managers of Lincoln City, Depot Bay, Newport, Walport, Yahats, Toledo, and Celeste to discuss Order Floor 20-1118 and framework for reopening short-term rentals and lodging properties. And then we also have that Monday, May 18th board meeting that Wayne just spoke about. Even though it says 10 a.m. here in our agenda, that likely will change as we have several other meetings kind of piling on top of each other. So we will get back to everybody with a press release on what time that'll be. And then Wednesday, May 20th, 2020, 6 p.m., Lincoln County Budget Committee meeting, and that will be virtual as well. All right, hope everybody has a good week. Stay safe, and our meeting is adjourned. Thank you.